Class. It is 7 o'clock, I believe, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We are studying the book of Proverbs, and our subtopic is wisdom, which was our number one choice. If I'm super ambitious, I would say we're going to finish wisdom tonight. If I'm super realistic, I would say we probably won't finish wisdom tonight, but we'll try. So we're going to just jump right in. On Sunday, if we think back to our outline of the book of Proverbs, what do chapters 1 through 9, how do we outline that? It's all one group, chapters 1 through 9. Shannon?
Wisdom and foolishness.
Okay, so it's a discussion, or a fancy word would be a discourse on wisdom and folly, or wisdom and foolishness. So a lot of our reading, as we focus on wisdom, is coming from these first nine chapters. So we started on Sunday, we looked at the call of wisdom, and we looked at the value of wisdom, and I think we looked at the security of wisdom. So these are different aspects of wisdom. So tonight, I'd like to look at the rewards of wisdom, the way of wisdom versus the way of folly, and then God's relationship with wisdom. So that's kind of our next focus as we delve further into wisdom. So if you will, turn to chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. We read this on Sunday morning, so I'm not going to have us reread it, but if you would look at those verses, chapter 3, Proverbs chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. And when we think about what are the rewards of wisdom, what are some of the things that you see from those verses? Pleasantness and peace, okay. Verse 17, boy, I had an eye doctor appointment today, and it went really well, but apparently not well enough. I should have brought my glasses. Verse 17, her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. So again, those are two rewards that wisdom brings with her, is peace and pleasantness. Carol?
She's more precious than anything in the material nature's precious stones and
Sure.
gold and silver like.
Yeah. And again, we talked about this before. You might say, well, I don't really care about rubies, that I'm not interested in it. Again, they're using gold, silver, and rubies as things of great material value. We might substitute houses, cars, and jewelry or electronics. Yeah, we might place it differently. The point is, wisdom is worth more than physical things. All right, what other rewards are there of wisdom? Shannon.
Long life, riches, and honor.
Okay, so in her right hand is long life. In her left hand, riches and honor. Well, wait a second. I thought wisdom was worth more than gold and silver and rubies. So it sounds like wisdom is riches. What's the? Is that a contradiction? Shannon?
So I think those are just some of the benefits if you practice wisdom in your life. And again, it's a truism. It's not like, automatically you're going to live until you're 110 and be really wealthy. But in general, if you practice the principles of wisdom.
Exactly. So rather than spending all of your time and energy and effort, rather than prioritizing the accumulation of wealth, prioritize wisdom. And you know what one of the byproducts of pursuing wisdom will be? Is you will probably end up having doing well financially. You'll probably have what you need. You will be blessed by God and rich. That's not a abundant life promise. That's just, we look at Solomon. He could have asked God for anything. A lot of young people would ask for riches. He didn't. He asked for wisdom, but he certainly used that wisdom and accumulated huge amounts of wealth. So long life in her right hand, riches in her left hand, but also honor. And again, we might focus more on the riches than the honor, but I think as we get older, we appreciate more things like honor and character and reputation and respect, and we recognize that that too has value and is very meaningful. And when we think about how will we be remembered, or what kind of influence do we have, or when people think of us, what do they think of? That has value as well. Carol?
Well, verse 13, happy is the man who finds wisdom and the man who gains understanding. I think we need to give a lot of thought to that, because that's a lot better than the material side of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah, so the happy, or it kind of sounds a little bit like a beatitude, right? Blessed, happy is the one who finds wisdom. And again, yeah, playing the game of life by the rules of the world is not going to lead to true happiness. Being wise and recognizing, where does wisdom come from? Where does knowledge come from? From God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, right? Recognizing that life is about a relationship with God, that wisdom is going to help you be truly happy and blessed. All right, good. Other rewards of wisdom. Did we cover it?
Peace.
Peace, okay.
With love and faith be part of that? I mean, in a fact where you're going to see God, in the future, because you don't live here permanently, so, all that is love and faith
Yeah, certainly there's positive things associated with it. I think verse 18, she is a tree of life to those who embrace her. This is again the her being wisdom. That tree of life. When you hear tree of life, what do you think of?
you think of long life when you're in spiritually.
Okay, the Garden of Eden, right? The tree of life, and this, or we might think of heaven. This ability to partake of the tree of life and live forever. And so maybe we're starting to see this relationship. There's a connection between wisdom and God there. All right, anything else on the rewards of wisdom? Okay, very good. Let's look at the way of wisdom versus the way of folly. So we've got some reading here, kind of a long reading in chapter 9. We'll read verses 1, just verses 1 through 18 of chapter 9. Anybody want to read that for us? Verses 1 through 18. Emily? All right. Just verses 1 through 18.
Wisdom has built her house. She has hewed it out of 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also furnished her table. She has sent out her maidens. She cries out from the highest places of the city. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, come, eat my bread, and drink of the wine I have mixed. Forsake foolishness and live, and go in the way of understanding. He who corrects the scoffer gets shame for himself, and he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years of life will be added to you. If you are wise, you will rise for yourself, and if you scoff, you will bear it alone. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knows nothing. For she sits at the door of her house, on a seat by the highest places of the city, to call those who pass by, who go straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And as for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of hell.
All right, so very good. So actually she read the entire chapter chapter 9 there. So only Emily, if she chooses on the 9th of November to skip chapter 9, she can do it because she read it. Which is my reminder that we want to read through the book of Proverbs at least twice. And we said in the month of November and December, I said in the month of November, I encourage us to read one chapter per day. So hopefully you remembered that, and you've thought, okay, today's November 2nd, so yesterday you read chapter 1, today you read chapter 2. If you haven't done it, guess what? It's only the 2nd. So you could easily knock out 2 chapters today and then start that. Keep that going. So just a reminder on that. But so we talk about the way of wisdom versus the way of folly. And by the way, what do we mean here? How do you interpret the way? Okay. And Carol?
Path being taken.
Okay.
They choose children to live.
Okay, yeah, the way of life they've chosen. I almost picture also the kind of the way as in they have a place. They have in the city. They live on a street. There's a path past their place. Maybe I'm not interpreting that correctly, but wisdom has built her house, and she and it talks about the highest point of the city, and then in verse 13. She sits at the door of her house on a seat at the highest point of the city. So we got 2 houses. They're at the highest point of the city. They're both calling out. So those are similarities. So it's almost like there's the path. There's a way that goes by the wisdom's house. There's a way that goes by folly's house. They're both calling out. So those are similarities. But where do we see the differences? Other similarities or differences? Shannon.
So, one difference is wisdom actually has something to offer. I mean, she's prepared this wonderful feast. Folly is telling people, hey, I've got stuff for you, but she doesn't actually have anything to offer. What she does have is, she says it's stolen. I don't know if that means like she's advocating a life of crime, or it just means she doesn't really have anything of her own.
Okay. All right. Justin?
The first thing I'd see is that wisdom is described with a lot of attributes of work. So a lot goes into being wise. Wise doesn't come for free. You have to work at it. The pursuit of wisdom is a lot of effort. And then the rewards of it are precious. That's going back to what we just read. So it's also hard to come by. And that sets you up. You have a good foundation then to correct or not correct. You have the willpower. It's the things you're learning through wisdom. Who to spend your time with, who not to waste your time on.
Yeah.
But the folly, the way of folly is the way of foolish person, where that's actually everything that's described here is very easy to do. You don't have to do a whole lot to be a fool. You don't have to pursue anything. You can be basically lazy and try to trick people to be like you.
Yeah. Very good. And again, when you line them up, verse by verse, wisdom has built her house. The woman folly is loud. Kind of interesting. And she's undisciplined and without knowledge. She sits at the door of her house. So I don't know if that's significant. Wisdom has built her house. Preparation, work. Folly just sits in the door of the house, almost like there's no mention of preparing food, preparing drink, preparing a table, getting ready to try to host, show hospitality, to create a welcoming place so she can impart her wisdom. She has something to offer, as Shannon said. Sounds like the folly offer is, I'm sitting in the door, I'm yelling loudly, and what do I have? Well, hey, why don't we steal something? We'll steal some water. We'll steal some bread. We'll have something to eat. In fact, let's face it, the sweetest food, the best food is that which we eat in secret, right? Or is that talking about when we break our diet and we sneak into the kitchen to eat something that we're not supposed to? Is that what that's talking about? Or is it, okay, I don't think that's what it's talking about. I think it's talking about stuff that you know, it's illicit, and there's this thrill of, hey, we're doing something wrong, we're taking something that's not ours, that makes it appealing in some way. Carol?
Well, it says that wisdom has furnished her table, so that means she's doing something active.
Yeah,
It would be right to help.
correct. Productive, working, preparing, making, whereas the folly is just, hey, let's steal something and enjoy it. And a very different approach to life, but there's also some similarities. And who do they both call out to?
The simple.
The simple. That's right. We talked about that. So we got wise people, we have foolish people, and we have the simple. And those are the people who haven't decided yet whether they're going to become wise or if they're going to choose a life of folly. So both of them are kind of speaking to the same people. Other thoughts, comments about this chapter 9 and comparing wisdom and folly? Yes.
Well, people who they're calling to not be called middle of the roaders,
Okay.
people in the middle of the road, which
Yeah.
means they really haven't chosen yet,
Yeah.
and that's kind of a dangerous place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I mentioned this on Sunday, the idea of there's three categories that Proverbs, the wise, the foolish, and the simple, and we might say, well, I don't want to be in the what did I say? Wise, foolish, and simple. Yeah, I definitely don't want to be the fool, but I don't even want to be the simple. Like that to us would be an insult, right? I'm simple-minded. But again, I think we need to look at this. This is all relative to what? Wise, foolish, simple, in relation to what? Yeah, following God, having a relationship with God. Do you recognize God as creator? Are you seeking him? Are you submitting to him? Are you trying to learn about him? That's wisdom, would direct you in that way. Or are you a fool who says in his heart, there is no God. I reject God. God doesn't exist. Or are you a simple person who just hasn't thought about it much? And you haven't made that declaration that I don't believe in God or I reject God. You just really haven't thought about it. You're preoccupied, with whatever is in front of you that day at that time. But Proverbs says kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Portend. That's a little bit too fancy. Present this idea of there's this tug of war, and we see it in Proverbs, and there's other parts of the Bible that very much there's spiritual warfare going on, and we're what's being fought over. God is given His Son and has done all of this to win us over, but He's not going to force us. But then there's Satan and there's evil, and they're doing whatever it takes to try to win us over to their side. Debbie.
Yeah, I just noticed on the end of verse 18 that her guests are in the depths of hell.
Yes. So when she does get somebody to come. And again, who does she get to come? She gets those who lack judgment. And she's, stolen water is sweet, food eaten in secret is delicious. Like, isn't this good? The life that we've chosen is so good. But little do they know that the dead are there, and her guests are in the depth of the grave. The path, that life, that way leads to death. And so while maybe there's, maybe that stolen food or drink does refresh momentarily, it isn't going to sustain. All right, very good. What else? Justin.
I think, for me, the hardest part about all these verses is probably 17
Yeah.
whatever. Rebuking a wicked man, that's, we probably want to do that quite often, because that's also pretty easy to do. But you can recognize a wicked person and you want to scold them or punish them,
Sure.
give them a piece of your mind.
Sure.
You know? What's way harder though is to rebuke a wise man. So that also says the idea there is you're thinking of yourself as a wise person. And you're recognizing another wise person. Like, and you're going to rebuke them. That's hard to do. That's not easy.
Yeah.
Because you have to be secure enough with your worldview, your belief system, or whatever, and you have faith in that person that they're not going to, that hopefully you know they're wise, so they're going to also engage in a normal conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And then teaching, that's actually not a problem, but it's rebuking a wise man, that's hard. Out of these three things.
Yeah. So I think the contrast really is your efforts to correct a mocker, rebuke a wicked person, or rebuke a mocker. That going back to an example I used last week, that's a little bit of throwing your pearls before the swine. And so, to your point, yeah, there's definitely times when we see somebody, a wicked person or a mocker, and we just, maybe we're biting our tongue. We really want to address that. But I think the intent of the proverb is to say, that's probably, most of the time, that's not going to work out. That doesn't mean it's wrong to try to correct them. They're just saying, again, you're casting your pearls before swine. It's probably, they're not going to respond. On the other hand, try to teach somebody who's correct somebody who's wise, or instruct someone, rebuke a wise man, instruct a wise man, teach a righteous man. The point isn't, are you qualified to do those things? The point is, that audience, they're going to be very receptive. That's a good place to spend your time. So, someone who's older and wiser than you, they still make mistakes. They might do something that you say, hey, you know what? You didn't really handle that very well, and here's why. The point is, that person, that's worth your time, even though you might feel like, I don't know if I'm, any better than this person. But it's not about that. I think it's about that is time well spent. That person's going to be receptive because they're wise. They're going to receive instruction. They're going to receive correction. So I think that's really the import of it, more so than evaluating, am I qualified maybe to rebuke someone who is wise. Interesting. It is an interesting section, though. It's kind of some of the wisdom that comes that you would get sitting at the feet of the wise is some encouragement about spend your time here, and it's probably going to have better results than if you spend your time chasing down all the fools and the mockers. That's probably not going to lead to a lot of success. Daphne?
I was going to say, it's also can be kind of a litmus test about, or like, to evaluate yourself. Like, how do you accept correction? Do you do what we see, like the wise man does, and accept it?
Sure.
Or do you shame the person who corrected you if the correction was valid? How do you accept that?
That's a great point.
And kind of
Yeah.
evaluate yourself based on the
Yeah.
sources.
So the last time you were given instruction, the last time you were corrected, the last time you were rebuked, how did you respond? And maybe to Daphne's point, that kind of helps us see what category we're falling into. Did we receive it? Did we accept it? Were we glad that someone took the time to stop us and point that out? Or did we insult them? Did we abuse them? Did we express hatred? We probably revealed our character in some ways. All right, very good. Anything else on the way of wisdom versus the way of folly? Carol?
If we accept it when somebody comes to us and tries to show us where we've been wrong, then that's going to help us grow to be able to do that for the next time, for the
Sure.
next person.
Yep. All right, so let's now look at God's relationship to or with wisdom. So let's do a couple more readings. Volunteer to read chapter 8, verses 22 through 31. Tim? All right, thank you. Chapter 8, 22 through 31. And while you're turning there, I'm going to read chapter 3, verses 19 and 20. And so the question that we want to be thinking about as we hear these passages read, what do these passages tell us about our source for acquiring such wisdom? Again, what's the relationship of wisdom with God? So I'm going to read chapter 3, verses 19 and 20. By wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding he set the heavens in place. By his knowledge the deeps were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew. So those are my two verses. Tim, if you'll read yours.
The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up, at the first, before the beginnings of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. Before he had made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he made firm the skies above. When he established the fountains of the deep. When he assigned to the sea its limits, so that the waters might not transgress his command. When he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was beside him like a master workman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhibited world, and delighting in the children of man.
Okay, so who's talking in the passage that Tim just read? Who was brought forth at the first of his works, before the deeds of old?
Jesus.
Okay.
Unless he's talking about wisdom here.
Yeah. So yeah, when you see something before creation, we're talking something that existed. It's either eternal or it was before creation. So our minds probably go to God, to the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Who are we talking about here? But if we go up a little bit earlier in the chapter, verse 12, I, wisdom. So we got the personification of wisdom here. So fancy word. We take something that's not a person, but we assign to them kind of human quality. So wisdom here is saying, yeah, everything that you see here, I existed before that. Now, I don't know. I'm not prepared to get into a discussion about, is wisdom eternal? Is that what this is saying? I don't think that's the case. Wisdom isn't an entity that is eternal. I think wisdom is a quality of God, and God is eternal. And so when wisdom is identified as, this is how long I've been around, and God used me in creating his, everything that you see in creation. He applied knowledge and understanding, and so when we think about it in that way, it's a characteristic of God. So we ask the question: what is the relationship between God and wisdom?
God is wisdom.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like saying, what is the relationship between God is love? And we would say, well, God is love. He defines love. He created love. He shows us love. I mean, God is love. And I think we can do the same thing when we talk about this kind of wisdom and knowledge and so forth. It's hard to separate them. So it's a quality of God. It's greater than, mountains or the ocean or something like that. God used wisdom to create the universe. So in that sense, wisdom is very impressive.
Well, verse 22, the Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way before his works of old.
Yeah.
I think that says it.
Yeah. All right, other thoughts about God's relationship with wisdom? Yeah, yeah.
That seems to me to spell it out.
Yeah, so in some ways, it almost sounds like wisdom was created before anything else, before the physical world was created, wisdom was created. Or is it saying, I existed before those things because I am a character of God, a quality of God who is eternal. So, Shannon?
So, one thing I think about this is just that, so God used wisdom to set up the world, the way that people work, the way our minds work, the way relationships work. And so that gives us even more reason to follow the instructions and the advice that he gives us.
Okay.
Is that he's the one that set it all up.
All right. Other thoughts? All right, so some discussion questions for us. So some of this is kind of review, but where does wisdom originate? Okay? Yeah, that's one of those easy answers, right, with God. Proverbs 2, verse 6, for the Lord gives wisdom. So it originates with God. And then chapter 1, verse 7, for the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So that's another common verse that we've been focusing on. And then chapter 9 and verse 10, same thing. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So wisdom originates with God. Does having wisdom guarantee that we will live by wisdom? Show your work. It's like Philip Chumley. You have to show your work so you can get partial credit. Philip, you shook your head no, so show me your work.
Repeat the question.
Sure, yeah. Does having wisdom guarantee we will live by wisdom?
Because that's our choice. We might be wise about something, but whether or not we do, it's just like, you might be lazy.
Yeah.
You know, and, no, I don't care to do that, or I do things stupid. We all do things stupid that if we stop and think
Sure.
about it, we would have done it.
Yeah. So one of the great things about the Bible is it presents things very objectively. And so when we write stories, when we write fiction, you know, our good people are really good and our bad people are really bad. And so there's so many things in the Bible about you know, people of God, and they did bad things. They did stupid things. They did things that they regretted. They did things that were sinful. And so to Philip's point, we can be wise. We can make a lot of good decisions. But none of us would say, "Oh yeah, right now I'm batting 1,000. I'm perfect so far. I just got a few more decades, and then I'm almost lived a perfect life." Like none of us. But hopefully we would say, I'm trying to be wise. I'm trying to improve and draw closer to God. And so, hopefully we would categorize our life as being we've chosen the path of wisdom, but we would know that doesn't mean we've always lived by it. Any other examples that you could think of relative to this question, having wisdom versus living by wisdom? Carol.
Solomon.
Okay, yeah. So again, the author of many of the Proverbs is kind of the case study, right? He had more wisdom than any of us,
But he always did something wrong.
but he didn't always live by it. He did sometimes, but he didn't always. As he got older, it seems he chose to not live by even his own words of wisdom. All right, so someone has suggested 7 pillars which uphold wisdom, and if you remember chapter 9 that Emily read for us, wisdom has built her house; she has hewn out its 7 pillars. So that's kind of this idea. Sometimes when I associate these Roman columns, Roman pillars, with wisdom. I don't know. I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking or researching that connection, but I think this is where it comes from. And so some have suggested here are some things, what these pillars might be. So understanding, we see that mentioned a lot. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of, the second one is knowledge. So understanding, knowledge, prudence, shrewdness, instruction, discretion, and perception. So those have been suggested as seven pillars of wisdom. And I think we would agree, and we've talked about this a lot, that wisdom, we often say it's the application of knowledge, but it's hard to, you don't box it into, it's just one thing. And some of these, what's the difference between, what's prudence? Who can help us understand prudence?
Cautious and thoughtful.
Okay. Now, President Bush Sr., right? Wouldn't be prudent. Wouldn't be prudent. So he used prudent a lot. What about shrewdness? Now, shrewdness might be one of those words that we kind of maybe have a little bit of negative association with. Somebody who's shrewd, we might think of them as being what?
Shady, maybe, but
Maybe a little shady. Jeannie, what did you say? Tricky, yeah. Maybe they can see things that others haven't seen. They can see an opportunity that maybe others are a little bit slower to pick up on. It's not inherently a bad thing. So I think it's kind of evolved to, if someone is shrewd, we tend to maybe assign a little bit of I got taken advantage of. But I think Jesus encourages us to be shrewd, right?
I was thinking about the parable he told about the shrewd manager.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're encouraged to be shrewd. So it's not an inherently bad thing. Did you have?
I think sometimes we feel like use of the word shrewd tends to imply a little deceptive.
Yes. Yeah.
So we can feel negative about the word.
Sure.
meaning of-
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There are some who apply the you must tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then there's others who say, I don't have to tell the whole truth. I have to tell the truth, but I don't have to tell the whole truth. There's a field over there. I'm going to go buy it. But I'm not going to tell the guy that I'm buying it from that there's a treasure buried in the field. I know that. I'm going to go buy it. So do I tell the whole truth, or do I just tell the truth? Say, hey, I want to buy this field. Again, so we might say that's kind of tricky. You took advantage. You were shrewd. So we might struggle with that. But the point is, there's different aspects of wisdom. It's not just if we say grace is unmerited favor, and wisdom is applied knowledge. I think we're oversimplifying, and there's various aspects to wisdom here. Other comments? All right, discretion and perception. What do those bring to the table? Perception is part of wisdom. Yeah, how you perceive things. And some people are perceptive, and other people aren't perceptive. Right? And we probably all have things that we're more in tune with and other things that we're not in tune with. I think often stereotypically guys can be imperceptive. Again, stereotype, but yeah. So they're being able to pick up on things, to see things that maybe aren't obvious. Discretion. What is that?
I think of it as like knowing when to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. Like, what's the right thing to do in this case? Maybe, well, the right thing to do is to keep your mouth shut. Well, how can that be? Why? Well, we've all been there, right? We've all said something. We said, well, I should have just kept my mouth shut. That was, and maybe our intentions were good and we just did a poor job. Or maybe we weren't perceptive and we thought, I'm going to crack a joke. I do this a lot. I try to use humor a lot, and sometimes I use humor at the wrong time. So I wasn't perceptive, and I didn't use discretion, like I tried to be funny at an inopportune time. All right, well, thank you very much. Have a few questions left on wisdom that we'll finish up on Sunday, and I'm optimistic now that we will finish wisdom on Sunday, and then we will start topic number 2, which is self-control. So wisdom got 94 votes, self-control got 82 votes, so we will be studying self-control as our next